Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. You can find my books on Amazon, Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children. And feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. I have four ladies on here. I have Camilla Gasket on. I have Stacie Porter. I have Typhanie Williams, and I've got Mandy Fernandez on. And we're going to talk about what's going on in California in several of these courthouses and why they are getting their children taken away from them. And this corruption that has been continuing for years for some of these ladies. Camilla, however, lives in Oregon, but her case is in California, Stanley Mosque Courthouse. And she requested for years, and this has been going on for years, to get her son back. And she hasn't seen her son in 2 months. And she had been primary for 3 months. And then we'll talk to her, and apparently out of the blue, her ex came. So I welcome you, Camilla. How did all this start for you?
Yes, so I actually am from Oregon. I resided in California during the time of my pregnancy, and I made a deal basically that I would stay here for years so that the father could have a relationship with our son. And after about a year, I would move back to Oregon so that I could raise him with family.
Mhm.
In doing this, obviously he did not fulfill his end of the promise. And the day after our son turned 1 year old, I was served with court papers that said that we were going to start going to court because he wanted custody and to establish paternity. And it was just a nightmare that unraveled very fast. I no longer felt that I could trust this individual, knew this individual. Oh my goodness, what am I in? And now let me remind you, I'm the type of person that has never been in a courtroom. I have always been a good individual. I changed my career from an interior designer to a teacher just so I could figure out how to work and still be around my kid and make ends meet. I was the primary parent of my son for over 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the court process, the dad asking over and over again for more visitation, more custody, making up all sorts of accusations about me having to just prove it again and again. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a pedophile. I'm not this and that. I mean, the list went on. After a while, one thing stuck, and they granted him full custody and told me no contact with my kid come December of 2023. I've been fighting to get custody back. Just yesterday, we were in court. They granted him a restraining order on me because he came in saying that since I've been speaking out about this, that it is coercing other viewers online and other people in the world to go and harm him. I mean, I cannot believe that he now has a restraining order on me just for speaking up. And that's why a lot of women don't, is because when you speak up, they find ways to punish you. And it's because we're trying to fight to be with our kid, and that's all we want. I mean, me personally, I just want to be a mother. I had no idea that being a mother would entail all this hardship from just trying to co-parent with another individual. And so I have not seen my son in 2 months. I just got told yesterday that they're going to allow me to start having video calls with him since I live in another state. Because I stayed here for over 3 years asking for a move away with my son. And once they told me again and again, I could not see him. I could not handle it alone. I do not have family here. I needed to be with my support system to get through all this. Mm-hmm. So I'm back in Oregon. They're helping me cope with it all. And like I said, we just came here for a hearing yesterday, and now I have a restraining order slapped on me. And I'm told now you can have a video call with your kid and once a month supervised visitation, of course, at my expense.
Always at your,
exactly. And prior to this, I was allowed supervised visitation for about twice a week, and I brought this monitor to the hearing yesterday to testify that she felt I was a good mother, that I had never harmed the kid. She did not feel I was in any danger to him. And yet there I got now only once a month supervised visitation. So it diminished. So it went from being able to see my kid twice a week to no contact again for a second time in my life to now once a month. There is some serious problems happening here. My case was originally in the Pomona courthouse of California. I protested outside of that courthouse the day they told me no contact. I couldn't take it anymore. And then it got moved, luckily, to a new courthouse in Stanley Musk where I'm being seen now. And I'm just hoping for justice to please turn around. Oh, man. I don't know. Lord, help us all.
Yeah, that's crazy. And what I found is these courtrooms participate in alienating a parent from their child.
Yes. Having gone through my experience, at first I thought I was crazy. I thought, why are they doing this to me? Why are they punishing me? Why are they treating me like this? And slowly I've met the other moms that are here today. We've started our own little support group to help each other, to tell each other, you're not the only one. They've taken my kid, and I'm not a bad person. You're not a bad person, because as soon as we tell our story, people go, what did you do? And they question us. And they think that we're an unfit parent because that's how they've labeled us and made us seem at this point.
For their own benefit.
Sorry, say again?
For their own benefit.
Exactly. It's really hard. I'm glad to have met the other ladies, and we're trying all we can to just bring forth awareness of what's happening, how the courts are corrupted over here in the family court system, and trying to just gain any kind of dignity back that we originally had. Before all this, I was never called and slandered so many names.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Yeah, the thing is, I did a podcast several months ago, and it was titled "You're Not Crazy, Family Court Is."
Great title.
Yeah, it was really a good podcast. So what, you're just kind of punting now, waiting for the next court date?
Yes, the next court date is in October for me. That's really, I mean, not even, October. It just feels so far away. All the time it's waiting for that next hearing in hopes of something better to come along. But every time you go into that courtroom, it eats at you, and you feel like you've lost a little bit more of you, and a little bit more of hope fades away.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hard to have any kind of positive outlook going in at this point. But I'm going to keep fighting because my son deserves it, and he deserves to know that I'm trying. So.
Yeah, this is something you just have to keep going through, and it's very hard to do with a personality disorder.
Definitely
will not work with you. I understand that perfectly well. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think the only thing that I want to add for all those watching is it's been very difficult to get even the group that we have here to speak today. I know everyone's told not to talk. Everyone's told to be quiet or they'll be punished. But the truth of the matter is, the more we talk about it, the more awareness it's going to bring forth, and everyone needs to speak up. I really, really wish everybody would, because then we might actually stand a chance.
I agree. I think you all are so honorable for coming on here and speaking your truth. Stacie Porter, now you're in California, and apparently they're going to try to take your son on Friday. You're at the Long Beach courthouse.
Yes, I'm at George Duke Majan Courthouse that is in Long Beach. I have the same judge that Tiffany has. And I believe Mandy has as well. Yeah, we all have Carla Garrett. She's the judge. And my son has been with me for 7 years. He's 7 years. And I got an order in the mail to turn him over immediately to the father, and that I would get supervised visits 6 hours once a week, and I pay for it. My son has no bond or anything with his dad. He's been gone for 3 years. Now, originally he was to do supervised visitations,
Mhm.
which he kind of did every now and then.
Mhm.
And then he went to court doing the supervised visits and asked for a step up. And they granted him a step up to 3 hours, 3 times a week. At that time, the supervisor said that he wasn't even ready for a step up. But I had no choice. They told me I had to do it. So we started doing the 3 hours, 3 times a week, and it was really devastating for our son.
Mhm.
Um, the way he would come back, he went back to he not being potty trained, just crying all the time. And when I would call the dad, and he would say, "Well, we're just going to go to the park." And I would tell my son, "You're going to go to the park today and go have fun." He didn't want to go to the park. So one day he just walked away. The father just stopped showing up for the 3 hours, 3 times a week. And here we go, 3 years later, that he went to court and asked for full sole physical custody, and Carla Garrett granted it. So I am supposed to turn him over on Friday, June 28th, a day before my birthday. And that
Oh, are you there?
that's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm here. So
So,
that's my situation.
so 3 years later, so he stops coming around, and 3 years go by. Then he comes out of the blue, and this seems to be a pattern. They come out of the blue, and this judge with very little common sense grants him full custody.
Full sole physical legal custody. Yes. And they have no bond. Like he's been with me since the beginning. He's never left my side. So yeah, I'm I'm just brokenhearted because of what's been happening to man
Oh, you're breaking up.
and everyone on the call. Tiffany, just I know their stories, so I'm very scared and nervous.
I'm so sorry. And you mentioned that this is around your birthday. And I can tell you, it seemed like for me, whenever they scheduled a hearing or whatever, it was around, my birthday or my wedding anniversary. It was really weird how they had things like they knew when to send letters out. It was terrible.
That's crazy. My son was taken 4 days before my birthday.
Oh, see, Tiffany. Oh, okay, so
Another mom. Oh, sorry.
go ahead. I've got Tiffany Williams on, and she's in Long
It's
Beach.
Wilson. Wilson.
Wilson. Oh, okay, sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Tell us what's going on with you.
So with my situation, my son, dad declined when I first had him. He did not want me to have him. Dad is a pastor. He's part of the Disciples of Christ. If anybody knows the background about that congregation. He did not want anything to do with it because he was trying to conceal his acts as a pastor, having a child out of wedlock. So I decided to back away, but I was not going to have an abortion. He pretty much told me during the pregnancy, this was not a blessing, it was a curse. I was going to mess up his reputation, his financial status, his status with political people, and so forth and so forth. I said, well, I'll just stay away. I stayed away. I didn't ask him for child support. I didn't bother him. I didn't anything. When I did have my son, I did tell him that I was having him. And if he wanted to see him, he could see him. He's on another floor in ICU. He never showed up. He never came. I got a text, though, saying I better not put his name on the birth certificate and do not give him his last name. I had already said to myself I wasn't giving him his last name. He would have my last name. And I wasn't going to put him on the birth certificate because I already knew you can't just put them on there without the father being there to sign it. So it was a done data. Then for a year and a half, almost 2 years, no, nothing. Then he gets a girlfriend. Girlfriend comes to me. I reject it. She's a sheriff with the Los Angeles County Department. I rejected anything she tried to propose to me, like, I don't know you. He doesn't even know his child. So pretty much she did not like that I went against her, I guess, as an authoritative figure, but that didn't matter to me. Next thing I know, another They had a visit. He asked for 1 hour a week. The judge at that time was Gia Bosley in Torrance. He asked for an hour a week, and Gia Bosley gave him 3 hours, 3 days a week, Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And he couldn't even keep up with that.
Whoa.
When he was going for the visits, my son was coming back like just crying. He just was different, just not the happy baby I was seeing or had been nurturing all this time. So I said, okay, maybe we should, take it down to 2 hours and see, or I don't know. But again, he dropped off. He just disappeared. Came back about a year and a half later, and he texts me and says, "Oh, the Raiders just won. I thought I'd give you a call." Huh? But it was 2 months before a court hearing that we were supposed to have in December, because, during pandemic, a lot of things got pushed around.
Right.
So he calls me about 2 months before the hearing stating that, and I totally ignored him. When we went to court, he said that I was stopping him from seeing his child, and I was like, what? And that was that. He didn't see his son again. Then he calls back 3 months later. I let him see the baby. We go back to court. They give him this step-up plan that was aggressive, quick, like within 2 months' time, it was boom, boom, boom. And my son, his first overnight, even with the regular night visits, he was running to get out out to the house. The first overnight visit, my son cried. He slept. Each time he spent the night with his father, my son would come back at 5:30 in the evening. He would either already be asleep, or he would sleep within an hour's time of getting back. And he would literally sleep all night long until about 6 in the morning, maybe get up, maybe eat, maybe not, and go back to sleep. It was just odd behavior. This was the child that would wake up and say, "Mommy," and I'm like, "Oh my God, it's 5:30, it's 6 o'clock, hold on." But I brought that to his father's attention to try to do things, sensibly, and say, "Hey, maybe this is too much. Let him just keep coming for the day and hold off on the overnights." But his wife, now they got married. She was like, "No, no, no." And I just thought she has nothing to do with it, but she was obviously controlling it. Next thing I knew, he got upset. His mother found me and found out that she had a grandchild, found me. I spoke with her. I would take my son to visit the grandmother every Sunday for about 2 or 3 hours. And she was like, she apologized to me. She said, people don't know it, but my son has bipolar or schizophrenic. And I'm like, okay, that was that. But it started explaining some of the behaviors. And she was very sympathetic with me about what was happening. He became very, very upset when he found out that his ex-wife connected me with the mom. Then they filed a motion. He and his wife, I say they filed a motion to modify the custody. And Garrett assigned a minors counsel. And like I said, within 7-8 months, my son was being taken from me. I went to court. That was in September. Minors counsel lied, caught me off guard. My son, CPS had got called out because my son came back with a swollen jaw. At the time, I did not know it. But Dad said, "Oh, me and Mom discussed that. She said it was just a bite." But this was after the damage. And I said, "No, that's not true. Here's our talking parents message." But it was already too late. The investigation was closed as inconclusive, but pretty much it was said in their privacy that Mom made this up. She's trying to just make a problem, but that wasn't the situation. He lied. Then the next incident happened to my son. That was August. The next incident happened, I believe it was September 19th or October 19th. He came back and he had two darkened eyes and a blue, like a bluish knot on the middle of his forehead. And I asked Dad at that time, I said, what happened to his face? What happened? I didn't see the eyes. I just saw the knot at the time. And Dad literally looked at me, smiled, and got in the car as if I said nothing. But he also knew at this time now I'm recording the exchanges because he was telling a lot of untruths and delivering that information to the court. So I started recording for my own, like, for my proof.
Right.
Or I would take someone with me. 97% of the time, there was somebody with me to witness the exchange. When I told Garrett, Garrett said, oh, well, you have to have 2 or more witnesses.
Oh.
And I was just like, wow. And
Wow.
that was that. She would never look at the video. She would never look at anything. So another report went out for the bruising. And the second was the play therapist he had at that time, Kendra Delahoo. She made a call to CPS because the mention, she told her, my son told her that he was scared of daddies.
Mm-hmm.
So she made a report. She said she was mandated to make a report. And so I'd also shared with her when Dad's wife was to pick him up one day, he said, no, mommy, I don't want to go. Don't make me go. And he just started urinating on himself. And I was like, whoa, he was already 3.5. My son has been fully potty trained since he was about 1 year and 3-4 months. He's never had a bed wet. He's never any of that. So I was shocked. I was like, what is going on?
Oh.
So of course that was very alarming to me. And the second CPS report went out. There was a social worker by the name of LaShawn Tapscott. She did the first investigation. They turned around and put her on the second one. And because she did not do her due diligence to verify minors' counsel information or Dad's information, I asked them to not have her investigate anything. So they sent out another social worker. Her name was Stephania. I don't remember her last name. She came out and she talked to my son alone without me. And my son told her information. And she immediately sent me to, I guess they call it a hub. And it was their own doctor. And I had to get him there within the hour's time. I was like, okay, here we go. But I never was worried about it because there was nothing that I ever lied about, that I was not integral, that I omitted, or was I a harm or danger to my baby? Mm-hmm. So I took him. When he got there, they saw the bruising, they documented it. They said that they were going to order a child psychologist for him so that they can get the information the proper way from a professional as far as who did the bruising or, the incident. And I did not decline. I said, no problem. They ended up closing the case as inconclusive. And that's when we went back to court in January, and minors counsel stated a lot of allegations that were untrue, and I was able to prove them. So I went back to the therapist, the play therapist, Kendra, and asked her to write a statement exactly what she said and what took place between her and minors counsel. I submitted that as my exhibit in the motion for reconsideration, and that fueled them all because that was my proof on why you guys made such drastic changes on the January 19th hearing. That hearing was to take place on 3/17 for the motion for reconsideration, March 17th of 2022. However, in between that time of filing that motion and that court date, Garrett ordered 24 or 28 straight days away from me, no contact to father. And I was like, what the heck, and who the heck does that? Oh. While my son was gone, and I had 3 days a week, I could talk to him for 30 minutes. While he was, every time I called, my son was bawling, crying, Mommy, I want to come home. And you could tell somebody was in the background. I recorded every call. I have it on video. So it wouldn't have been me of them trying to say I'm coercing or I'm, telling the child to do A. It wasn't that at all. So if anyone would look at it, you could clearly see even 5 days, a week, 2 weeks, my child was in distress. So I asked Dad, I said, I messaged him in Talking Parents. If you're not noticing that this is stress on the baby, blah, blah. He said no, he wasn't going to do anything different. When I went to court on March 17th, 2022, like I said, I went in for the motion for reconsideration. My son's finger, when he came back from that 28-day visit, his whole thumb, I didn't notice it at first, but I noticed he was dropping a lot or kind of clumsy. And I finally decided to, hey, what's going on? And when I went to go touch his hand, he, pulled back quickly, and then I noticed his thumb was swollen. The nail was discolored. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I called the doctors and said, hey, this is what's going on. They asked me to come in. When I came in, they sent me to Children's Orthopedic or something hospital by USC, I guess for like bone injuries. They said, okay, what happened? They took x-rays. The doctor said, this is inconsistent with a bike fall. They, of course, had CPS come in there on me. And I said, hey, I didn't do it. I just got my son back yesterday. And his wife said that he injured himself on a bike. And he said, no. And he asked me the story over and over. I said, that's what they said. He said, this is impossible. This is what I do. I'm all day long. He's like, are you sure you want to stick with this story? Yes. Come to find out, they stated that the injury was inconsistent with a bike fall. This was not an injury that, his injury to his thumb was not consistent because he had no scrape on the hand. He had no scrape on his knees, elbows, ankles, or his forehead. And anybody and everybody, 99% of the time is going to scrape one of those areas. And then it dawned on me. So when CPS spoke with my son, he told them that Mimi, which I didn't know at the time, Mimi was a name that they had my son call his wife because originally they were asking him to call her mommy. And when I found out, I corrected. I said, hey, why would you do that? That's not his mommy. And then next thing I know, he's saying Mimi. So when he's coming home telling me Mimi did this and Mimi did that, I'm thinking he's talking about a child. I'm not knowing that Mimi is the stepmom. So of course I was pissed off because now I realize Mimi's the one. When he said Mimi smacked me, now I know who Mimi is. And only thing again in Talking Parents, I told his dad, if you're going to have him around other children, watch those children as well, because all children are not kind. So watch my baby, please. And that was that. I thought and then even when I asked him who Mimi was, he said it's a friend of theirs and it's a relative of Kiana's. So I left it alone. So those are the things that Minors Council and them didn't look at as far as the manipulation tactics. So
now not to interrupt, but something also happened with Judge Carla Garrett. This child abusive judge also had you put the father's name back, or put the father's name on the birth certificate.
No, she didn't. That's why I'm wondering, how were you able to change his name? He's not even on the birth certificate. And from everything I read, that the state won't even allow you to change a birth certificate without both parents' signatures.
And it just happened. I mean, it just happened.
I don't know. I have to, just in speaking with Ms. Porter, she had stated to me, you should get the another birth certificate to see if they even changed it, because I don't think they can do that. She said, and she gave me her story about how her son's father was on, she got her son's father on on his birth certificate. So I just was like, I would like to see how they're going to how this is going to play out. So I will in the near, like soon, I will order that another birth certificate to see how they were able to do that. When I went to the Social Security office, because I originally did not order a Social Security card for my son, when I went down there to try to apply for one, they told me that there was already one in the system. And I'm like, how? I never applied for one. And then when I asked for it, they told me they weren't giving it to me and that I had no legal custody. And I was like, whoa, but this guy isn't on any document stating that he's the father. So I don't even know how they were able to do that. I don't know. So when March 17th came, they came in there with more allegations. There was this doctor's report. I didn't know what they were talking about. Only the judge, the minors counsel, and Marissa Grayson, which is opposing counsel, they were the only ones that knew what was being talked about. I had to call the doctors the same day and ask them what took place. Why is this? What doctor's report are they speaking of? His statement to me was, oh, this is an easy fix. You don't have Munchausen. They're going to give you back your son. And here it is, 2 years, 3 months since I've laid eyes on my son or spoken to him. I tried to get monitor visits. I had my first monitor visit and I told the lady, I showed her the report and said, I don't have Munchausen. I did not abuse my child. Why would I need a monitor? Then she stated that I was a flight risk. I said, that was never even discussed in court. How is that I'm a flight risk? Then when I went back to court, I mentioned that to the judge and she says, I don't know anything about that. And I'm just like, okay, well, you took my child for what? You already know. She would never give me a response. I've asked her every time I go back to court about why can't I have my child? I filed probably about 8, 9 motions since, and she still refuses to give me my baby back. I don't know why.
Oh, that's terrible.
I've mentioned it to her, and even the day of court when they took Isan, like I said, there was no motions by minors counselor or anyone stating we're taking the child. These are allegations, and this there was no due process there. When I was in court and they were doing this, and I, of course, my body language, my face said it all.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, the bailiff came behind me. My purse was halfway in my phone, halfway in, halfway out. He reached over me and went into my purse and took my cell phone. Locked me out of my own cell phone. Was going through my cell phone, and while we were in court, hello?
I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I heard something. While we were in court, he's calling off names from my phone log. So I knew he was in my phone at that point because those were people that I actually had called. He also went through my text messages. So the judge took my phone. She began to go through it and told me to call the people on my phone. At first, I declined, thinking that if I had called them, she was going to change her mind. But she didn't. So one of the people I called, and when I realized she wasn't, that's when I became a little bit more brickish. I didn't do it. So what she did was she started calling the numbers from the phone at the court and calling the people. Do you know Tiffany? Do you have this? Where's Isan? Where's that? And I was like, whoa. So when that happened, they did not allow me to leave the court. The sheriffs at the court, the bailiffs, did not allow me to leave the courthouse until Long Beach Police Department came. At that time, it was a detective by Detective William Sentinel. He was on the case, and 2 other detectives came with him, and they would not allow me. And I was like, am I being arrested? My fear at that time was that here I am standing 5 feet, about 113 pounds. I do not want any of them touching me, trying to mace me or anything. So that's where my mind went. But then there was a part of me that wanted to act a fucking fool, but I couldn't, because now you're whatever it is that you're saying I am, I'm going to validate it and make people think that is what it is. But it wasn't. My instinct was to go into mother mode, protect mode. I wanted to turn into a mommy bear, a snake over her eggs. I don't know.
Right.
That's just how I felt. But like I said, my fear was that I wouldn't get them back if I reacted and did something out of order.
Oh, I'm so
And
sorry.
then they can say violence. And yeah. And that was where my mind went. And like I said, it's been 2 years, 3 months since I've talked to him. Minors counsel, she just, yeah, I don't know. I could say so many ugly things, but I won't right now. I'll
Well,
be a lady.
oh, well, I completely understand. I'm going to go to Mandy Fernandez. Hello, Mandy.
Hi, if it's okay, I'd like to go last, if that's okay. I'm with
You
my
want to go
kids right
last?
now.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All
I have
right.
I have a bit of a lengthy story. I'm not really sure. I mean, not trying to give every single detail, but I do feel like the information I need to share is extremely important, especially because just hearing, I'm sorry, I didn't get the other lady's name that was just speaking. Everything she was saying, I mean, just one thing real quick off the rip is how they try to make us feel that reacting as a mama bear is unnatural and oh, we're crazy and it's hostile when it's absolutely opposite. It is put within us from God, and it's not just about being religion, but whoever created us, this is just natural across all, people, mammals, animal kingdoms. When you come and you threaten a mom and her children, she goes into I will hurt you mode to do anything to protect my family. And that's just what it is. And not even most males in the animal kingdoms will do that either. It's always been the mothers and the females. So I just wanted to make a point, but I have a lot of things I'd like to share just because I feel like it is time that my story has gotten out. But I'd like to go last if that's okay, because I woke up and Stacy was like, hey, get on this call. So I was like, okay, I was half open. So I'm just trying to take care of them before I get on and speak with you and share my story.
Okay. All right. So then, all right, we have who wants Stacy? Is it Keri, wait, not Keri, Stacy, right? Stacy? You're hello?
Well, yes, I pretty much told you my story.
Okay.
I still have my son. I'm supposed to turn him over on June 28th.
Right. Yeah, I'm so sorry, Stacy. And we've talked to Tiffany and Camilla.
Yes.
Stacy and okay, so I don't know.
Okay. What about, I see a Miss Carrie, or there's a new person that hopped
Keri,
on. But
I can't hear you.
Hi there. Good morning.
Hi, and your name? I'm sorry.
I'm Carrie Sukeno. Sorry for joining late. It's been quite the past 24, no, how about past 24 months?
So you've been
morning.
in family court for how long?
Well, I'm now at the other end of this, and I hope I can be somewhat of a ray of hope to these other women, because I finally settled after 5 or 4 basically grueling years of fighting in family court. 6 years after my divorce, mind you. Yeah. So I'm on the other side of it, but I am an advocate. I try to be an advocate for these women. I've met Tiffany, I've met Anna, I've met Camilla, and I'm very close with Camilla and have tried to be, there with them through this whole process. I don't know what more I can add to the story today. I don't know what aspect you want me to bring. I can talk about my story. I don't know what it is that I can provide.
Did you present the settlement or did he?
I did. I did. So basically, in short, I'll let you know. I divorced in 2012. My
Mhm.
son was about 5 years old. I moved into an apartment, left the family home for a year lease so he could figure out what he was going to do with himself and try to, see what's going to happen. Well, it's 2024 and we still live in this apartment, my son and I.
Mhm.
So everything for about 6, 7 years until my son was about to go into the 6th grade, like the 5th grade, middle of 5th grade. Father was in and out of town for all those years for 13% of the time because he was a builder. He took jobs away from Los Angeles where we reside. So
Mm.
every other weekend for a day and a half, he would come home to his son. And I stayed here in Los Angeles, not natively being a Los Angelino, I'm San Franciscan. I stayed here because a father needs a son needs a father. Only living grandparent, mother-in-law, as well,
Mhm.
was the only one here to help me in absence of her son, my son's father. So mother-in-law helped, and that was a whole other story, but I digress. Fast forward to 2018, father decides to, come back in the spring of 2018. I'm under the guise that he's going to come back and finally help me
Mhm.
raise our son. Said, I've had enough. I'm not traveling for business anymore.
Mhm.
All these years I'd been asking him to do just that. Well, unbeknownst to me, it was not to come and help me raise our son, but to court a woman and
Mhm.
begin a new relationship. Moved her 6 weeks later into the family home. And then 6 months after that, around the holidays, Christmas of 2018, married her and did a lot of nefarious things with our property and our home, and then set out to take my son away from me and claim that I was an unfit mother. I
Oh.
get a letter and an email on January 1 of 2019. I'm sitting on the beach with my son. I got him out of here for a 2-day surprise trip to Hawaii for New Year's Eve, just to get away and decompress and just kind of deal with what's going on. Meanwhile, back in California, he's marrying this woman. I get a scathing email on the 1st of January 19 telling me that Eugene Cristiano, the same attorney that's representing Camilla's son's father, that's how we got connected. And for 3 years,
Mm.
I fought for my son against this man and all of his money and this spawn of Satan, Eugene Cristiano. I'm just going to call it like it is. Many child custody evaluators, minors counsel, therapists, child family therapy, reunification therapy. I mean, just the money making machine that this whole business of family law is. It
Mhm.
destroys families, it breaks families apart. And the family law court system has no business doing all of what they're doing. If there is a criminal element involved, in my belief, then it should go to child court. Yes, CPS was involved, DCSF, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
It culminated December of 2019 with my son trying to ultimately commit suicide, jump off a
Oh.
2-story building at school, punched a brick wall, broke his wrist. I get a
Oh.
phone call. This is after Susan Ralston, PhD child psychologist. She is pure evil. She is a child custody evaluator. Ultimately, that's how Camilla and I found each other, because I had wrote a scathing, Yelp review. I have
Mhm.
filed a complaint with the California Board of Psychology against her. It is still open. I just needed to send more stuff to them. Like, it's a process. They
Oh,
are
yeah.
all in bed together. They're
Right.
all protective of each other. I had the first judge recused because she took, after 10 months of sitting on the bench, October 1st of 2019, they took my son from me for no reason, no nothing. Oh, I'm just done with this. You've been in my courtroom for 10 months and I'm just going to go with what this custody evaluator says. And she recommends, basically, they called me everything from a drug abuser to a mental patient to a whatever they could write about me, because he paid her $40,000 to do it. Dr. Ralston was paid $40,000 to write a child custody evaluation. And all of this perpetuated by Eugene Cristiano. My ex-husband just gave money and was like, he's a workaholic, alcoholic, just let them do it. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, here's this little boy in the crux and being torn apart. And our lives have been turned upside down. I went bankrupt, maxed out all my credit cards, borrowed money from everybody I could, lost my job because I was emotionally unavailable to keep
Mhm.
up my job. Then I was, accused of being X, Y, and Z because, oh, I'm just trying to work the system and there's nothing. I mean, the accusations and then rubber stamped by this doctor who met me 3 times, and, tried to say that she's awful. And she rubber stamped the report, wrote the same exact report for Camilla's case, And so fast forward, my son ends up Friday the 13th of December, 2019, being rushed to the hospital, talked off the ledge by police officers. He's too young to go into county psych treatment. They take him to a child's ward of a hospital, 24-hour suicide watch, strapped to a bed for the first few days. This went on for over a month. I worked to get him transferred to UCLA children's, facility, because my friend is a head nurse there on the children's psych ward at Ronald Reagan at UCLA. And this was how we spent Christmas and New Year's. And I was supposed to have my son back in 1 month from the 1st of October. I was supposed to get him back on the 30th, but Minors Council and the therapist that they assigned, they all got to choose everybody. They're all in bed together. They pull clients from family court together. Oh, they didn't think that I had done my work and I wasn't taking responsibility. And this is the same thing that Camilla experienced in court yesterday. She's not doing what she's supposed to do. And she didn't agree. She didn't lie down and let him walk all over, because I fought and I fought, right? Mm-hmm. So finally, it got moved out of, the one judge got recused. I let go of my attorneys. I went in pro se, pro per, represented myself. It changed things dramatically when that happened, obviously. So we finally get back in January, the end of January of 2020, into family law court. It gets moved. Ex partes were written. Nothing. Nope. There's no problem here. My son is telling the therapist and the psychiatrist at the hospital. We have statements from the nurses that watched for 24 hours. I made a bed, a cot, and moved in the hospital with my son. Where was father? Oh, punishing him. You're not getting your Christmas gifts because you did this, and you don't want to be with me. Tried to coerce me and lock me in a room for 5 hours and try to threaten me and tell me that he's going to listen to me and I need to go tell him that he needs to go home. No, it was a crap show. It was just awful. I can't even. It's just so unbelievable story. Long and short, child finally gets released. Has to return to the school that he did. He was completely depressed. Didn't want to go. Thank God for the pandemic. Mm-hmm. On Monday, the 16th of March, everybody got sent home. And that is what changed things. We had to start doing everything online with the court system. Ultimately, my ex-husband finally dropped his attorney. And there was all kinds of stuff as far as back child support, $42,000 that he didn't pay because he would try to punish me and take money out of my child support check. And I didn't know something that was child support services. And I was just, he'd send spreadsheets, thank God, his little spreadsheet showing demerits and taking money away because I didn't do this. When he had him on his weekend, if he would take him out for an event, he'd split it 50-50. It was all money driven. It was just sick. So I could go on and on, but long and short, the pandemic came. It slowed things down. And lo and behold, we were ready to go into a 14-day trial. And it was scheduled to go. And it was the fall of 2020. And it was the very same day, October 1st, ironically, 1 year later, where after our trial setting conference, and I had a lawyer write that he was going to take me into trial. And it was going to be $120,000 just to show up with all the depositions and all of the subpoenas and the court costs and the court reporter costs and all of that, and told my ex-husband, you're going to pay $20,000 November 1st, and you're going to pay $20,000. And then when we start trial in January, this is just a starting, my lawyer wrote, this is just a starting thing. And this judge knew what was going on there, and he knew that it was money motivated, and he slowed things down. And his name is the Honorable Judge Michael Convey at the Los Angeles Family Law Court at 111 North Hill Street. The man is amazing. He has been on the bench forever, and he's a really fair and just judge. And it took time, but what ultimately happened was I got a letter in the mail, an email in the morning of October 1, 2020, stating, I'll give you everything, 50-50 custody and the exact amount of child support that I had said and proposed back in 2018. But $500,000 later, at the cost of my son almost committing suicide, being hospitalized, a broken wrist, and not to talk about the emotional and mental stress and duress of the back and forth, and the therapists and the fighting between him and then this new woman being involved, moved into our family home. The destruction that was allotted by Eugene Cristiano, perpetuated by him, perpetuated by Dr. Susan Rawson and her fictitious rubber stamp child custody evaluation report, and Linda Hayes, the therapist. I wrote to the Behavioral Health Board against her. I wrote to the California Judiciary Council, to the California Board. They don't care. It is a money-making shuffling of papers. He who has the most paper, the most Benjamins wins. And I swear, if it was not for that pandemic and the financial stress and duress, and my ex-husband realized at that point, when it got taken out of, when the pandemic came, and when Michael Convey broke it down, and we had that the trial setting conference, and he basically laid it out what he was facing, he pulled back, and he agreed. I was a perfectly fine fit mother from 2012 to 2019, where you had 13%. They did the calculations in the Decimaster, right? Because the Decimaster is the machine that puts in the money and the time of what each parent makes, spits out a number, so the child has the same quality of life at both home. He made 13 times more money than I did. Was mad about it, and I even let go about $500 a month on that, trying to do the right thing. Ladies, don't ever do that. Don't ever think you're doing the right thing. Don't ever change the custody. Don't be like, oh, okay, you're supposed to pick him up at 7, but you got a family thing, you're going to come at 8. No. Follow what the law wants. Always say, I want what the law wants. Do not deviate. If there's anything I can tell these women that are going through this, and make sure that you are factual, facts, not emotion. Facts, not emotion. And I know that is so hard to hear, but you've got to fight fire with this. And if we're in pro se, like we all are, because we have been completely bankrupt and can't afford it, they make it to where they ruin your life. I've had private investigators follow me. I've been gang stalked. My phones have been hacked. My house has been broken into. I've been followed to my job. I've had just recently, because now I'm involved with Camilla's case and trying to help her, going against this same attorney. That's how I know. That's validation. And yesterday, when I said that on the court, when I was on court yesterday giving my testimony, Eugene Cristiano whispers under his breath, these women are crazy. Oh, why we're crazy? Because we know that you're behind this. We're crazy. That's what they tried to do. Yeah, she's crazy. No, now I don't leave my house. I started a YouTube channel. Because I do advocacy for all kinds of stuff. I created this YouTube channel during the pandemic, and I never really launched it until the last 6 months, because I was so badly terrorized and gang stalked and fair gamed and attacked. And I still am. In my home, followed every time I leave my house, dark cars with dark black lights sitting there waiting with their halogen lights, following me to my job, following me wherever I go, following me into the grocery store, taking pictures of me at work. I've kept documentation. I don't leave my house without either going live, which I've pulled back from because of Camilla's case. I've tried to pull it back because I knew it was going to rear its ugly head yesterday, and ultimately that's what happened. So, because they fictitiously took snippets of my YouTube and just showed what was and when you're not an attorney and you don't know what you're doing and you're trying your best, Camilla is the strongest, bravest woman I've ever met. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just a shame that it is a system. The family law court system is a money-making, in my opinion, unless there is obvious damage, like in Tiffany's case. There was even a case where Camilla's son's arm was broken in 2 places. They did nothing. She went to the hospital. They don't want to get involved.
Well, these judges don't want to look at evidence. They are child psychological abusers in black robes.
Thank you. There's a catchphrase, if you will, around the California family law courts. Parental alienation. It is not parental alienation is a weapon that they use, and they throw this word around, and that's what Dr. Ralston uses. That's her main weapon. Everyone's parental alienation, so on and so forth, and they wave this parental alienation flag around. Parental alienation, and I'll just say this because it's horrifying. There was a man who wrote a book about it who was found to be a child pedophile on his own right, and he ended up committing suicide. Okay, that tells you what that is. There's a fabulous doctor. Her name is Dr. Lynn Steinberg, PhD. She is working diligently to actually get parental alienation to have it written out what it actually is, and then she's lobbying in Washington to have it become a line item, if you will, for lack of a better way of saying it, in actual child abuse, and have it be recognized. It is not there yet. There's AB 683 or something like that. She's lobbying for this to be, but it is very specific. It usually happens between father and daughter. It usually happens between the ages of like 4 and 7 years old. It is this. And the Honorable Judge Michael Convey, God bless him, tells and tries to train family law judges that are coming into his area that he gives classes on, which is something that we want to see happen in the family law court system. We went to a federal court case back in April where I met Tiffany about families that have come together. We're working with an attorney out of Nevada that's trying to get a rule, learn the ABCs and they don't have just the basics of family law education. And so, like Judge Michael Convey said, when I was going through, we're not using that. We are not doing that. We don't do that in this court. I don't allow it. And I'm telling you right now that I try to train these judges, and they have been told in Los Angeles County, they have been told you are not allowed to accept that. Do they listen? No. They just do whatever they want. The most abhorrent example of a human Judge Lisa Washington ought to be ashamed of herself. They need to get her off the bench. She is destroying families. I thought that was a lot. I found out about Lisa Garrett or Carla Garrett at the Long Beach. Both of those women were appointed to the bench. They were not elected. Gavin Newsom, in a time of the COVID and a crisis, he had to appoint 4 judges to the California benches, and 2 of those women, Carla Garrett and Lisa Washington, were appointed, not elected, and they got seated in family law, neither of which has any background in that. They come from criminal law firms where they were like, they have no idea what they're doing, and they are criminalizing parents and weaponizing these things like parental alienation, and he who has the most paper wins. It's all I can say. And there's nobody overseeing them. There's nobody that you can complain to. Camilla has sent complaint over complaint over complaint to the California JCB, and that nope, unfounded. There's nothing we can do. Like, what are you talking about? Did you even look at what we sent you? Did you even investigate? Who is going to investigate this? And every day we hear more and more and more and more horror stories about what's happening in the court system, and it needs to stop.
It does.
The moral fiber of American family is already ruined, and then you've got these judges that don't know what the F they're doing, perpetuating it. And they're all in cahoots together.
Well, at the end of our little interview, I'll tell you a story that will also give you hope. But yes, even in my case, parental alienation was weaponized. As soon as the opposing counsel opened his mouth, because he always got to talk first, because he was BFFs with the judge, because they both worked in the DA's department for 3 years.
That's right.
And so he called out parental alienation, and she's crazy. So,
oh yeah, I'm crazy.
It's like, yeah. So it's like, how does a nurse of almost 23 years go batshit crazy overnight? Doesn't happen, people. But I'm going to. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Keri?
There's so much, and after the fact, in retrospect, I get so upset and angry, because then it's like there's so much. I'll just say this: it is so impossible for any human being, crazy or not, to be able to navigate. It's like I always say, like the tentacles of an octopus. It is so overwhelming. It turns you upside down. They literally set out to try to make you crazy.
Oh yeah.
They get real close, because you're like, is this really happening? So women out there, people who are going to hear this, we understand, and it is real, and it is truthful, and we believe you, and keep fighting, keep writing letters. Camilla wrote letter week after week after week to Shelley Kaufman at Los Angeles, Maine, the hub, and one North. I mean, all I can do is just tell you and implore you to keep going. Don't give up. We can't afford to give up. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. Don't lay down and just roll over. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I just know that it's real. It's true. You do feel like you're losing your mind. You lose your job. You lose your faith. You go through bouts of depression, anger, fit. You feel all of those like, what is it? Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the one that talks about the 5 phases of death and dying.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
wow.
I just keep moving, keep staying strong, keep fighting the fight, keep finding groups of support, try to be there for other people, show up in the courtrooms, learn how, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we did all these things and it still didn't turn out right. So I just, it's a long, about 3 to 5 years is about how these court cases go, and about $500,000.
I started out 2013 and then it stopped around 2018. Then I started a federal court case. I think that was 2019. And then that only lasted till, I think it was at the end of 2021, something like that. But hey, I gave them a run for their money. And I also beat the child support judge in Superior Court of Pennsylvania. So that's one of my wins I'm really proud of.
Me too. Me too. I did the same thing. I left in 2012. We got divorced. It was finalized. I moved into this apartment April of 2012. By October of 2012, it was finalized. We had, split custody. He came home every other week. And like I said, day and a half, when he was here one night during the week, if he was here, which he never was. So his mother and I held down the fort, and that was trials and tribulations in its own. And then everything was just kind of going like that. And then come 2018, when he brought this other woman and they set out. So I went through 2 divorces in essence without being married twice. People are like, what? How does that work? I'm like, well, let me tell you,
Right.
And that's the thing. It's like everyone's first initial thing is to not believe you. I've lost all my friends. I have 0 family. I have 0 friends. I'm by myself. My friends are Tiffany now. My friends are Camilla, Camilla's mother, Anna, Franklin, people who I've met that are going through what I'm going through, trying to find people that bond together. And even yesterday, Eugene Cristiano whispered under his breath, oh, she's crazy. These women are crazy. These people are crazy.
Yep.
Oh, isn't that lovely? Oh, we're going to play the crazy card. And they do. They play
do.
It, and he has the legal prowess or the legal jargon, the legalese. And these judges they don't want to be bothered. They really don't. That's how it feels.
It should just be abolished. It should just be abolished.
I agree. I think that and I'll leave you with this because I know I can just talk and talk and talk because it's just like things come to my mind. In my opinion, family law court should be if it's 2 parents that are both willing, capable, able, and loving. They want to provide a situation. It's bad enough that they're in divorce and they're breaking up the family. They obviously can't come to an agreement on custody and financial support. So they find themselves in family law court. Mm-hmm. It should be just that. They're just going there to help them find resolution to all this other shit that's involved with child counts, minors counsel, and custody evaluators. And then there's a new thing that Anna's going through, a parental coordinator that the Judge Garrett gave the parental coordinator the authority to make custody decisions. And now they're set to take her child away yesterday, like sending the cops to her house for what? That if it is that bad, it needs to be moved to child court where DCFS is or CPS, whatever the initials are, where it's criminal aspect, where there is violence that is inflicted upon the child by one of the parents, and that gets taken out of family law court. It goes over to child court. They call it here in Los Angeles. Child court is way over in City Terrace, and that's where the police, and that's where real destruction goes, and child, crimes against children. That's a different story, because in these cases, if they get over there, they go settle all of that, and then they move it back.
Sorry to interrupt, Keri. I actually convinced Anna to talk. She would like to tell her story exactly what Keri is narrating right now, if that's okay with you guys. She prefers to not have her last name disclosed because her case is so tangent right now on the custody of her kid. They're literally saying they're going to take her kid away any day now. And so I'd like to let her have a moment to talk, if that's okay.
I'm done.
Please,
I can talk forever.
Okay. I'm going to turn video off for her because she does not want her face seen. Here we go.
Hi. So thank you so much for taking the time to have this podcast. And talk to other moms about what's going on. I'm in the same boat with everyone. Basically, my case kind of started back in 2014, but I was on and off with my ex, and then there was a domestic violence incident. So I filed for an RFO in May of 2022. At that time, a judge in Long Beach that we all know very well, our favorite lady judge in Long Beach Family Court, she assigned a minors counsel, Matt Shahan. Well, Matt Shahan did not fill out FL 322, which is a required document to be filed within 10 days of being assigned, stating that they declare that they're a properly trained minors counsel. So there's that. There's negligence number one. Then in June of 2022, minors counsel was to interview my son at father's house and my house. And in court in October of 2022, he goes on to lie and say that he visited father's house and interviewed the child in his bedroom. Well, that's a lie right there. He had Zoom meetings. I have the Zoom meeting that was forwarded to me from father and my own Zoom meeting link, because he said both of those accounts that he visited the home. That's a lie. He also lied about when the domestic violence took place. He said that the domestic violence took place where father went to jail happened in 2014 when the child was 2. And so he could have not seen that happen. And so mother and siblings must have told the child that dad was dangerous and went to jail. Thus, his reason for labeling me alienating. Well, no, the domestic violence incident happened in 2021 when the child was 9. So, and he was home. So very clearly able to see what happened, dad going to jail. But no, minors counsel insisted on keeping his lie. Why? Because that's the only way he could label me as being alienating. From that point on, our son refused visits for at least 15 months. He was continually emotionally abused by dad, a couple of incidents of physical abuse, but of course, minors counsel just dismisses that, and that's not a big deal. That happened a year ago. Time to move on.
They all do that. They all do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you get over it, kiddo. My son even had to have another Zoom meeting with minors counsel in December, and my son voice recorded it on his phone. And in that video, minors counsel is threatening him, his own client, saying, you're going to get punished. It's at the point now that you're going to get punished, and you're a disrespectful little boy. You're not going with your dad, and none of this is a big deal. You need to get over it, kiddo. So he's threatening his own client, and my son was saying, well, my dad threatens, and he's saying that someone's going to go to jail and someone's going to get in a lot of trouble by court, and he makes threats and it scares me and I don't like him. And I don't feel safe with him. No, those aren't reasons to not feel safe. Those aren't reasons to not feel safe. You want to go live with your dad full time? We're going to have to punish you. So fast forward to March 2024, we go to court, and our same favorite female judge in Long Beach gives orders that we're going to stay with the 225, and any refusal of visits, automatic custody to dad, and mom gets monitored visitation. I'm to take our son to the sheriff's station. I'm to leave him in the lobby. I'm to walk out of the lobby, and dad's supposed to take him. So Saturday the 9th comes up. I go take him to the lobby and I leave, and he's in there for a half hour crying. At that point, father calls over a deputy with him, and that deputy, I find out later from my son, the deputy was saying to my son, if you try to run away from your dads, guess what's going to happen? The SWAT team's going to come after you, all the police, helicopters, and you're going to get thrown in juvie hall. And if I was your dad, I'd grab you by the balls and throw you in the house. And I officially give your dad to beat the shit out of you when you get home. So of course my son was very scared, And after a half hour of crying and crying and crying, he went with dad.
Oh.
At dad's house for the first 3 weeks, he was in total distress. He was crying. I was FaceTime calling him. I have several of those recordings I recorded with my camera. All I could say to him was, let's just take it day by day. You're going to be okay. He was miserably crying. He was saying, I can't be here. I can't do this. I said, Camden, is there anything you can do in your room? Is there any books? No, I have no books. I have no crayons. I have no toys, nothing. He was just left by himself. His father didn't even comfort him. When he would go out to talk to his dad and say, please just let me go home. I want to go home. I'm crying and crying. His dad would just say, tough. Remember what the sheriff said. Remember what the deputy said. You have to stay here. Thankfully, my ex did allow my older children, 23-year-old and 20-year-old, to go over there and periodically be with him to help him. So that was a godsend. But he was still in a lot of distress for about 3.5 weeks because we had to do the 225 schedule. He would come home. He would be a different person. He was depressed. He was counting down the days that he had to go there. And I said, just live today. You're home right now. I know you got 4 more days that you got to go back. Just, he was depressed here because he didn't want to go back over there. And to me, honestly, that's negligence. That's abuse. To have to subject a child to be crying like that. That is totally inhumane. Inhumane. So we had another court date that would just happened. And again, the judge reiterated, if there's any mess up in these visitations, there's automatic full custody. She also assigned a parent coordinator, and that parent coordinator was to be able to self-execute the full custody, which I found out later is not legal. Parent coordinators can't do that. They can only make minor changes and help the parents, with little minor things, not write the court order. So here we are, fast forward to Sunday, Father's Day. Father's time was supposed to be up at 7 p.m. and I actually did not see my son because there's a tracker on his iPhone. I didn't see them on their way back to me. So I told my son, okay, I'll just go get you. Time up. Your dad's visitation is done 7 p.m. on Sunday from Father's Day. Well, I get there and I text my ex saying, I'm here to pick up our child. Your time is up. And he said, no, you need to call your attorney. Custody's changed. I now have full custody of him. I said, what do you mean? It's Sunday. I'm not going to call my attorney on a Sunday. I called the police. I had my hard copy papers showing them that his time was up at 7 p.m. according to the holiday order. And the police also talked to my ex separately, and they came back to me and said, well, he's got this email from a parent coordinator that the email says he's awarded him full custody. And I said, okay, well, I need to talk to my son. So they brought my son over and I told him what's going on. He was really upset. And I said, just for now, because I don't know what's going on, just for now, go with your dad. And he said, okay, well, I need to get my retainer at home. So they come to the house. I followed in my own car. We come inside. He goes to get his retainer, and he had to leave his cell phone with his dad. That's the only way his dad would unlock the car to let him out, was give me your phone in exchange to go into the house to get your retainer. So my son comes in and he said, I'm not going back out. I'm not leaving. I'm not going with him. So I said, okay, you don't have to. My ex stayed outside in his parked car from 8:30 p.m. until 3:15 in the morning. He called the police around 9, and my older son went out to talk to him, and he has it on recording as well, because everything has to be documented. Even though they're going to say, oh, you're crazy for recording, we have to have the evidence and witnesses, or else we just don't have it. So my older son went out there and said, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? He doesn't want to go with you. My ex said, well, he has to. And I called the police, and they're going to come in and they're going to go into your house and they're going to drag him out of here. And my son said, no, he's not. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. Yes, they are. Yeah, I don't want them to do that. But yes, they're going to come in and drag him out. So my son comes back inside the house. My son actually called the police at 11:40, and he said, we feel threatened. He's out there. We're trying to get the phone back. My ex almost ran over my foot trying to take off at one point and then just made a U-turn and came back around. My son was in a lot of distress. He was having panic. He was shaking. He was hyperventilating. Hands were clammy and cold. And I just had to help him and hold him and just, he couldn't eat. And finally, he probably fell asleep around midnight, and I just put him into his bed, and I tried to sleep as well, but I really couldn't, but I did. And then come 2:45, I get a knock on the door, bang on the door. It's the police. I wasn't going to answer it. I didn't. So they left. They went out to the car and talked to John. They were talking out there for about a half hour because I could see on my Ring camera. And then, like I said, around 3:15, they left. Then so that was Sunday. And then Monday, I had to take off work. I was just too upset, too worried. And I'm telling Dad, your son is fine. He's safe. Well, Tuesday morning, they go file a no notice ex parte to get full custody because I am I've abducted our child, is what they wrote on there. He came to the house at 9:40 with police officers, and they served me with this ex parte that was signed by the court. And I said, this isn't valid. I know how ex partes work. They have to give notice. I'm given a day or two to file my response, and then the judge decides. And the cop said, well, no, this is valid. He now has full custody. And I said, well, it's 9:45 at night. My son's asleep, and I need to consult with my attorney. So I'm going to say goodbye to you right now. And they said, okay, well, you'll face the consequences. I said, that's fine. So they left. Then in the morning, I emailed my attorney, and she said, yes, it's confirmed. They did it this way. I said, how is this even possible? So that Wednesday, I took him to I messaged his dad, okay, I'll be at the sheriff's station at 2. And my son was having so much anxiety, just a ton. But then I took him there, and then he had to go with him, and he's been there ever since. And then Wednesday night when he was there, he was in distress. He was crying. He told me he wanted to commit suicide, and I have that on video as well. Mm-hmm. So I called the response team, a response number. They went out there and they spoke with him, and they gave me a call back, and they said, this is not to the level of taking him somewhere. I said, okay, well, that's good, but I want this, this still should be recorded. And they said, well, have him go to see his therapist. He sees a therapist. I said, okay. Thursday, and I notified Dad and talking parent as well. Mm-hmm. Then Thursday, same thing. He's upset. He's getting in a fight with his dad. They're fighting. And then he's crying and in distress. And he says, again, I want to kill myself. This is why I want to kill myself. I just want to, and I know how I'm going to do it. I'm going to walk into a building. I'm going to go tell Dad I need to go to urgent care. And I'm going to go to the elevator, and I'm going to jump in. And I think you know what happens after that. And so again, I called the response team. So they go, they go out there, they do another assessment. My older son goes up there to help comfort Cam. That's basically where we are. And when I did talk to my son later about it, he said, Dad's talking to his attorney, and she's really, really mad that the response team was called out. So Father is having conversations with his attorney in hearing distance of my son. That's also a violation of the court order. You're not supposed to talk about court stuff in front of the child. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that's something else that's happening. And he must put the phone on speakerphone, because there's no other way my son would know this is conversation that he's having with his attorney. Yeah. So that's where we are.
I'm so sorry. They're literally destroying the country from the inside out. Really.
And we go to court on Friday, the 28th. My attorney is going to be presenting their own ex parte. We have to do a response to their ex parte on the 25th. So I'm going to be working all weekend on that, on writing my declaration. And then we go to court on Friday, the 28th, where the judge will then decide if Camden has to go again for full custody with dad and me getting monitored visitation. And also, dad is still talking to my son about the court case. He's saying, well, dad, yeah, he said, dad said that
too.
This isn't going to be for, yeah, dad said this isn't going to be forever, that this after the summer, it'll go back to the old schedule. I said, well, he's not even supposed to be talking to you about court stuff, so I'm not going to talk to you about this. And then he says, well, dad said that you're going to get a monitored visitor. So who's that lady? And then how can you set it up? I said, again, we're not supposed to talk about, he's not supposed to talk about the court stuff. He's not supposed to be telling you this stuff. We're not supposed to be talking to you about it.
Days. Well, okay. I'm going to have Mandy Amelia Fernandez talk.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Well, first I just want to start off by saying I have been just in tears over here. And I really don't let too much of the world get to me or tear me down. I've been bullied pretty much all my life, and all I've ever wanted was to just love people and be loved. And the world is testing me, and hearing this just it breaks my heart, because we just want to be mothers. We just want to love our children. And for us to have to go through this makes absolutely no sense. Well, and it's great. Yes, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I'm so sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
I've been with my children since day one. I had 4. When I was younger, I always said, I don't want children. I know how children are. That would be so much responsibility, yada, yada. I always said, I don't want children. I don't know if I'd be a good mother. And when I got married at 19 to my children's father. And, we were together for 20 years when all this kind of ended and shit hit the ceiling. Sorry, I'm not able to cuss.
It's okay. It's all right.
But I waited 10 years to ensure that this was my person, that we were going to be able to go through ups and downs and whatnot. And I really thought he was. We did go through some ups and downs, and he wasn't perfect, and he kind of broke me in a lot of ways, and kind of turned me into a person I never thought, things I did, I never thought I'd want to do. But in the end, I always seen his effort and his heart, and I really believed he loved me. Mm-hmm. And 10 years later, we start having children. I was like 27 when I had my first, and I had her at the hospital. It was awful. After I had our oldest daughter at the hospital, I decided I'm going to home birth the rest of my children, and I did. And I have been that mother that always told him, I said, if I have children, I will not send them out into the world. And I hope nobody takes offense to this. This is just my personal belief. I started really educating myself and researching and realizing that they want our children in these systems to have them conform, to make them be their little foot soldiers, and make all, the people that run this world above all the money. They want all the money to go to their families. They want us to be consumers, and they do not want to educate us or our children about how to be free, how to truly be autonomous, how to think for ourselves, how to make money for us and our families, how to stay together. They don't want that. And so I was very against my children going into public school way before I had them. And I told them, if I have my children, there will not be babysitters and public school and all that. I will be the one to basically, be the mother and have the influence. And if you want to work, that's fine. I said, but it would be great if we could do this together and start a business and keep our family together, right? And for a little while we did that. He helped. I guided everything with the homeschooling. I bought all the equipment, these cute little tables and chairs. I mean, for a while we were good. We did good. But one of the things that kind of caused an issue, and I'm sharing my relationship with my children's father because I feel it's very important, because we fast forward to just these custody issues, but it's much deeper than that, and it needs to be known. That's what I feel. Everything is connected. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. They want to look at us like, oh, well, it's the woman who just decided to leave the relationship. It's the woman who didn't. But, it takes a lot, especially for a good woman and an even better mother, right? And I'm saying better mother as a not perfect. I mean, a mother who is there trying to be good for her children, good for her family, tries her best to do it, but she still makes mistakes. We're going to do that. But she'll keep getting up and trying and trying. So my children's father, there's an incident that happened with my daughter. I was pregnant with my third. I remember I got pregnant very quickly. It wasn't intended, but I got pregnant when our oldest daughter was 3 months old. Okay, and so our son, which is our second child, came very quickly, and I remember being pregnant when I was about 8 or 9 months with our third. And I ran into Target. We were in the car. I needed to get something. I ran into Target. It couldn't have been for like 15 minutes. I come back and I'm happy. I remember feeling and the smile on my face. And I come back, I'm just like, man, I love my family. I love, my city, my town, all this stuff. I get in the car so happy and excited. I turn around and I look, and my daughter has she has blood on the bottom right of her mouth. And all I remember is immediately looking to my husband, who was in the driver's seat, and my face just drops. And I remember, I was like, how did I know to look at him? Like he did it.
Mhm.
And I looked, I said, what happened? He says, he puts his head down. He says, she just wouldn't stop crying. I said, okay, and he goes, well, she wouldn't stop crying. I said, so you couldn't get out of the car? You couldn't get out, maybe take her out of her seat and maybe help her or something? I mean, what? So he told me exactly what he did. He said he took his hand, balled it into his fist. This was the hand that had his wedding band on it. He said he put it on over her mouth to push so freaking hard, which I don't even believe that was the case. He pushed so hard that it broke the skin on the bottom right of her mouth, and that's why she was bleeding. I said, oh my God, that was the first incident that had happened and occurred. And I was so fucking angry and I was so mad because it was like, what does a mother do? Do we just say, oh, he's abusive, let me divorce him and go and protect my children? Because this is the shit that's said when it's 7 years later and 3 of my children come to me and tell me, Daddy choked me. He lifted me up and he choked me, and I see the freaking marks around their neck. And I'm just like, what the hell? Like, is going on? What? And I try to step in and I try to help him. I try to help my husband. I try to be the wife that, you don't just throw your family under the bus. You stick in it and you work through it and you try to get to a point where you believe that they're going to change and you believe, all their promises. I'm so sorry. I'll change. I won't do it again. And it got to that point where I just was so broken and so dead inside. I didn't really feel like my husband was my husband. Every time we had to be intimate, I didn't want to. It didn't feel right.
Mhm.
It just got to a point where I was just lost in my marriage with my family. And I decided, something which I won't share here because it is very private. And, I don't want this out in the public. I'm not ashamed of it, but it was something that I felt, and I brought to my husband and he agreed. But what happened was, he threw me under the bus and put all of that responsibility and decision on top of me. And it made me look bad. But at the end of it, what happened was 6 months prior to him actually abducting our children, which this is true abduction. And this crazy idea of, oh, the mother abducted the child. It's like, no, the child was with me. I didn't go sneak him, pick up my child and run off with them. The child was with me. I kept him. That's not abduction.
Mhm.
But anyways, so 6 months prior to November of 2019, and I know I'm jumping all over. Hopefully you guys are sticking with me, but I'm trying to get this out quickly because, like I said, there's a lot. In May of 2019, it hit ahead, and my ex-husband came home drunk. He was gone for many hours. At this time, I was trying to build a business. I was always trying to figure out a way on how to keep my family out of the system so we didn't have to do the family split. Mom's at 9 to 5, dad's at 9 to 5, kids are off to public school. That's not, to me, that's not how a family should be. But we subject ourselves and we succumb to it because this is what we're told. This is what a good family does. You take dad out of the home, you take mom out of the home, and you send the kids off by somebody else to get raised.
Mhm.
And it's not our fault. We're conditioned to do this. Okay. And I just happened to be one that saw that, no, this is just not right. So anyways, back to May of 2019, my ex-husband, I had to go out to go work on the business. I was trying to do a life coaching business, trying to teach women how to, be a good mom, how to just be overall the best she could be. There's women out there that just don't believe in themselves. They look down on themselves. They have them, people are calling them crazy because they're strong women that just want to do things that are right for their family. That's all. And so he didn't come home. He ended up drinking all night. He finally came home. He was drunk. Well, that night he attacked me. We were arguing, and it wasn't even crazy arguing. At this time, we were kind of going through it where I was was trying to have conversations, many conversations with him about separation. I kept saying, you keep hurting the kids. I'm not going to stay. You're not keeping your word. Like, this is not a marriage. And he would not listen. He refused to listen. I said, okay. So we kept going just darker and darker down the hole. When we're arguing, he said something to me, and I looked at him, I said, you cannot force me to love you. Well, that triggered him. He came 15 feet. I was away from him 50. I remember I was brushing our oldest daughter's hair. She was only 7 at the time. I was brushing her hair in front of our balcony, this glass sliding door. He was in like 15 feet away from me in our kitchen. He had to cross from away from our kitchen over the living room in order to charge at me. He had a pitcher of water in his hand. And I pushed my daughter out the way, and I was like quickly thinking he's going to throw the pitcher of water on me. He's going to hit me in the head or in the face with it, or I don't know what he's going to do, but I braced myself. I got my daughter out of the way, and he grabbed what he ended up doing is grabbing my arm so hard, and he bashed me into the wall. When he finally let go, I said, I can't let that go. I'm calling the police. Well, what happened after was just absolutely incredible and bullshit. And just, this is where my nightmare started. The police came. Okay, we were in Virginia at the time. I don't know if I mentioned that, but we were in Virginia at the time, and it's very patriarchal over there. Okay, and they still have a lot of racism over there. So I'm a Hispanic woman that just to them did something against their husband to make him assault me and bash me into the wall, which was not what happened. We were just literally arguing. I wasn't in his face. I wasn't hitting him. I've never hit my husband, actually, as a matter of fact, never put hands on him ever. And when they came, he went downstairs, and I called my friend who was on the phone listening immediately after he attacked me. He left, he went downstairs because we were on the second floor. The cops came up and said, well, he said you egged him on. And I said, I said, I egged him on. I'm sorry, we were both arguing. I wasn't, what do you mean by egging him? And they said, he said that you were in his face yelling and that you wouldn't get out of his face, which is completely untrue. And they said, so he had to create space by moving you away from him. I said, oh my God. I said, that is absolutely not what happened. I said, I wasn't even anywhere near him. I said, I remember vividly what happened. And so what happened was they did not arrest him that night. He ended up staying in the living room that night. I stayed in the room with our 4 children. We have 4 children, and our children were 7, 6, 4, and 3.5. My daughter, who's 7 now, she was 3.5 at that time. So from May of 2019 to November of 2019, there were things that were happening. He tried to attack me twice. I was able to stop him. I said, hey, if you do it again, this time you will absolutely go to jail. He was able to stop himself. Okay. 3 months prior to him abducting my children in November 2019, he started withholding money. He stopped giving me money. I got a little bit of money from VA. I was in the military, the Army, for 3 years. So I got a little bit of that. And I put some into trying to, do the business and into our family. But all my money always went to the family, always. I never had my own account. So he tried to do it a couple more times. Then fast forward, we're getting closer to 2019. And he was tossing my stuff around one day, all around in my room, throwing it all over, scaring the kids. I said, if you don't stop, I'm going to call the cops. And at the time, we had 2 vehicles. And he kept saying, well, I want the keys to both the vehicles. And I told him, no, you can have your keys. You're welcome to look around the apartment. I will not stay anyway, but you will not get my keys, And so he called the cops, and the cop came. It was a white male cop, and he came and he said, you need to give him the keys. And I told the cop, with all due respect, you cannot tell me what to do. And I am not my husband's keeper nor his mother, and I do not have to give him my keys. I said, he is welcome, I said, to look through the apartment like I told him. I said, and he can find whatever keys he needs, but he will not take my keys. So the cop got upset. He looked at my husband and said, well, I can't do anything, but if she does anything else, let me know. And I'm like, if I do anything else? So he leaves. Okay. And then that's when he started tossing everything all over again. And then he ripped up my ex-husband ripped up a picture that was very valuable to me that I was saving for our children. It was a picture of me and my ex when we were 16. He ripped it up and threw it in the toilet. And I remember at the time how I found it was because my 3.5 daughter had to use the bathroom. And I said, let's go use the bathroom. And I opened the top of the toilet, and there's my picture. So of course, at this point, I'm talking about, this went on for like a year. At that point, I was just done emotionally, everything. He didn't get arrested. It was so much. I said, I started crying. I actually was so upset I peed myself. I said, get out, just get out of the, apartment. I said, I'm done. I can't do this. I said, you're scaring the children. You've done some. I said, you just need to leave. And he was on the floor and I remember pushing him on his back. I said, just get out. He calls the cops and the same guy came and I sat there. I was shaking. I was so distressed. I was so upset. I was like, what is happening? And all I wanted him to do was just leave. And mind you, my ex-husband is 6'1". He's 250 pounds. I'm 5'2". Okay. So the cop says, ma'am, did you put your hand on him? And me thinking, if I just tell the truth, if I just do things the right way, all will be well. So I explained to him everything that happened and why I put my hands on him to push him out of the apartment. And I wasn't even like a pushing. I literally like pushed him and he rocked forward because I remember he was bending down to the ground, like scraping up clothes from the floor. It was like he was trying to shove it in a bag. And that's all he did, rocked forward. And then, so I told him, yes, I put my hands on him to do this. I said, that was it because, and I explained everything that was happening. And the cop said, okay, so I'm going to have to arrest you. I said, what do you mean? And I said, he bashed me into the wall 6 months ago and those cops didn't arrest him at all. I said, and he says, no, I have to arrest you. I said, I know that's not true because of the incident that happened in May. He says, well, yeah, it is true. I have to take you in. You put your fingers on him. I knew that cop did it out of retaliation because I would not listen to give over my keys to him. So I was just devastated and I said, okay, and what else could I do? I wasn't going to, fight a cop and all this. And I didn't really know anything about law or anything at that time. So at least what he did was he took me outside and placed the cuffs on me. And, I went to jail. And that night I was released. I got out and I immediately, thank God I kept my keys because he never found the key to the SUV and I had a car to drive around for a bit or else he would have left me without children, without money and without a car. Out on my ass. So I went to my apartment, back to my apartment that night. I had to stand below and I called out for my children and he did allow my children to come out to the balcony. When I say he, I mean my ex-husband. And I said, babies, because I've never been away from them again, mind you. And so I said, listen, mommy has to be away from our home for a little bit. I said, but don't worry. And they're happy. They're chipper. They're good. They're like, okay, mommy, they're like, well, when are you going to come back? I said, I will be back in the morning tomorrow and I will be back at night. I said, but I have to be away from the home for just a couple of days. They put a 3-hour, restraining order on me that I had to be kicked out. I said, even though it wasn't me that even knew anybody there in the city, he had all the friends. He was the one who had the job there. As a matter of fact, he was the reason why we were there in the first place in Virginia. And I told him, I don't think this is a smart idea for us to live here and stop here. But he wanted to do it and I wanted to support him. I said, okay, you got this. Let's go. Well, he didn't got it. He hated his job. He wasn't making the money he promised he'd make. And he was becoming very depressed and angry. And, it was just absolutely insane. So I was like, okay. So anyway, so the next day I came back. It's 12 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. This all happened on a Friday, mind you. On a Saturday, I come back. It's like, I think 11 or 12. And I call my babies out again. And this is significant because I want you women to understand to trust your intuition and your instincts. When something is telling you, do not do this or do this immediately. When you think you're crazy, it's not what it is. It's something trying to tell you, it's God's spirit, whatever, telling you to protect yourself and your children. So he allowed the children to come down, but he did something weird. He was standing outside on the balcony watching me like a hawk. And I didn't get it. I was like, what? Like it was the weirdest thing because it was never in my heart or in my mind to think that he was going to do what he did. So they come down and we're visiting and whatnot. And my daughter comes and says, oh my God, they all hug me. They're so excited. But what happened was they ran out into this like field that was in front of our apartment. And I was like, you guys come here. And they were playing. And I was like, it's fine. I was just visiting. But my daughter, who was again 7, she says, Mom, I'm so happy. I'm so excited. And I said, oh, what are you excited about? Right. I try to make it seem like it was as normal as possible. She's like, well, uncle's coming over. She's talking about my ex-husband's brother. I said, okay, red flag. I said, your uncle? And I'm like, it didn't make no sense why he was coming over. I said, well, why is he coming? She goes, well, I'm afraid I can't tell you. Daddy told me. And he was looking right at her and staring at me. I said, hold on, baby. I said, his name's Adam, by the way. His name's Adam. I said, Adam, are you planning on taking off with the kids? That was my first thing. He didn't say anything to me. He just shook his head no. I said, do you promise? I said, you're not planning on taking my children from me? He just shook his head. Something in me told me he's lying. So I said, okay. So I said, baby girl, I said, why is your uncle coming? She goes, well, he's just going to visit for a couple of days, but she wouldn't talk until I actually had to remove her from around my car. I brought her to the back of my car, and that's when she told me, Uncle Siskel's coming to visit. He's going to visit us for a little bit, and that's that. I said, okay. And immediately something in me said, grab your kids. I had four, mind you. Two of them are right there, but two of them are out in the freaking in the field. And he would have had enough time to come down, but I don't care. I wish to this day I would have at least tried. Something told me, get him in the car and just leave. You need to get in the car and leave. You can call him later and figure out what's going on. Well, I found out when I went back that evening at 9 o'clock, I think it was 8 or 9 o'clock at night, as I promised my children. My apartment was completely black. It was dark. I wasn't even allowed to step foot in there, so I was afraid to go in there. I had to call a friend who came and went into my apartment. She came out just with the look that I knew. My heart sank, and she said, your family is gone, and I'm so sorry. I said, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't comprehend. She said, your children are gone. Your husband is gone. She said, there is a note here. And she said, and she said the deed, the title to your car is on the thing. Like, oh, thank God he left me the title to the car. How considerate of him. So I ran up to my apartment. And when I tell you the feeling I felt when I went, it was like I was in outer space. I still remember that feeling till this day. I was like in outer space. I said, where am I? I don't recognize where I'm at. And I cried. I said, what the hell is going on? And I called him, and I called him and I said, where are my children? Where are you? I said, you don't have to tell me where you are, but just tell me they're safe. Tell me they're okay. And for 3 days, I was tortured for 4 days. I don't know where they were. So on the 4th day, I finally found out. A cop called me and said, are you, so-and-so? I said, yes. And she says, we have your children. I said, who are you? What do you mean you have my children? She says, your ex-husband is here in California. And I dropped to my knees, and I remember the bloody murder scream that I just let out. And my friend was actually with me. And I said, oh my God. I said, my kids. I said, he's taking my kid. And I said, where's their father? I said, where are my children? Where? And he said, well, the father's here with the children, the brother, and so he didn't even get on the phone with me. His brother, the one who helped him abduct my children, that's why he was there, because since they were 4 young children, he needed another adult to help them to get on a flight, to be able to get them on a plane to cross the country. So he got on the phone, and I was like, Cisco, what's going on? Where's my children? Why are you guys there? And long story short, this is how my nightmare started. So of course I immediately go to the Virginia courts, and I try to petition, hey, my children's father has abducted him. He's taken them across the way. We've been here in Virginia for almost 2 years. Our residency is pretty much here. I said, he has a job here. We have a home here. I said, please make him bring them back. And my ex got a lawyer, and she said a lot of nasty things. And mind you, I was still kind of out of it. I really didn't know how to think. I felt like somebody like did something to me where I was drugged. I just felt like I couldn't really like focus on basic, simple things and information.
Well, you're traumatized.
I was completely traumatized. Absolutely. So then what happened was, the judge basically said that he wouldn't be making my ex bring them back, but because it was too much for him to do. He said it was too hard to make one parent bring 4 children, and it would have been easier for me instead to fly back over there. So I just couldn't believe it. I said, what? I said, that's your logic and rationality behind not returning children to a mother and their home, making him come back to at least have whatever proceedings we're going to have, divorce, child custody. It should be done here, and I should be able to be with my children through it. Like, my children should not be able to be ripped out of my life like that.
I think somebody's under jurisdiction.
Right. So, well, here's where it gets even more tangled in this web. So it all kinds of stuff happened, and I do plan and intend on going back and doing something about it. But I just been in mother mode, and now anybody who's a mother or single parent at all, whether you're a single mother or father, you're busy, and you have to focus on what's in front of you sometimes, and things have to be put on the back burner. But what ended up happening was, it was 5 months of like litigation of trying to get the children back. And as soon as I got the orders that it was permanent and that he was going to get full physical custody, but we both had 50-50 legal custody, I packed my shit in my apartment, because the reason I held on to the apartment for 5 months was because I was hopeful and believing in the justice system and thought, you know what? I'm going to keep this home. I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm going to keep this home because my children are coming home to me. They need their rooms and their home to come back to. So that's why I kept on to that, the Virginia apartment. And when the judge gave the orders and said they were going to be allowed to stay with him full, not full custody, but full physical custody, meaning living with him in California, I packed my shit, got all my stuff. And I think it was, because that was in July. And I think, my ex actually came back, here's the crazy thing. We were very somewhat amicable at the time, and the orders were very vague. And basically what they said was that he would have, everything I share with you, but then I would get video conferencing calls with them. And here's two key points in those orders that happened. My ex-husband said, listen, don't fight me for the kids. He manipulated me. He said, he put it on me saying, don't put the kids through this anymore. Don't like as if that decision, what he did was on me. He said, they've been through so much. If you just let these orders be as they are, he says, I promise, he goes, as soon as you move back to California, he says, we'll change the order. So everything's free. And everything's equal and everything's right. We'll both have equal this, equal that. I would never, ever keep the children from you. These were his exact words. And I trusted my ex-husband of 20 years. I said, okay, just because our marriage is at an end doesn't mean that, he's like this evil, awful person that's going to do all these things. Well, I'll tell you, ladies, I was wrong. Okay. So,
well, where are you at?
Go ahead.
Where you're at right now? Because, how are things working out for you now?
Not at all. Let me tell you, the lady who shared the story about a woman coming into the picture and all of a sudden everything changes. This is what happened. 3 weeks after the abduction, he started connecting with this woman. And actually, I was happy. I was like, hey, as long as you're happy and our kids are taken care of, let's work together. Do what you feel like you have to do in your life. I honestly was just like, we weren't meant to stay together. That's fine. And but what happened was this lady started doing very devious things, and she started turning his head against me. And when I say this, she started posting things which I didn't even know about her, because I'm just not petty like that. Like I said, I have my own life and much bigger things in life that I'm trying to accomplish to help people in the world, to actually build and create and to help, not to destroy, tear down.
She inserted herself, as was
she
my
inserted
case
herself.
as well. Right.
She started posting things and lies and allegations and saying how she was a mother of 5 children. All these things. My family had to tell me, you better talk with your ex, because this lady's saying. I said, I don't care what she says. Like, that has nothing to do with me. And that's just, makes her look at her. She says, no, but the things she's saying. I said, okay. So I had a discussion and my ex was like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. I just didn't want to get involved with it. But what ended up happening was she gave him an ultimatum and said, it's either her, meaning me as the mother, or her as the new head honcho in town. And after that, he started to tell me I'm not allowed over his, and it wasn't just his family, it was my family. I wasn't allowed over his mom and dad's house anymore. I was completely, like, everybody in that family turned their backs on me. Everybody, after knowing these people since the age of 16, after taking them on as my own family for 20 years, not one of them reached out to said, what happened? Tell me your side of the story. What is going on? So this lady started basically just putting things on social media saying how I walked away from my children, which it was absolutely untrue. Started saying a lot of things, started telling my children again, the other lady, that you need to call me mom, and then started lying to me. Yeah, they all do it.
You know what I'd like to do? I hate to interrupt you. I'd like to.
No, it's okay.
I had this great idea. You all have fascinating stories, and to interview you each individually in the future.
Yeah,
because they're your stories, and even my story. They're so in depth, and I completely get it, because we've all experienced a lot of this. Yes. And I want you to hang on, and I totally appreciate Camilla Gasket, Stacie Porter, Typhanie Wilson, Carrie Sukeno, someone who was anonymous, and Mandy Amelia Fernandez. And I'm going to have you all on in the future, but don't jump off. Slam the Gavels, a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, other platforms I don't know about. Feel free to buy me coffee to help keep this podcast going. And I thank you all very, very much for sharing your stories and your truth and speaking out.